Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C, and we're talking real sports with Charlton and Big C Sports every Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it is worldwide. I want to thank all of our great listeners down in Latin America, so bienvenidos to you. Also got some people tweeting out from London, England, also Berlin, Germany, as well as Canada, and of course the great United States. Big C. Today is May 5th, 2016. Cinco de Mayo's coming around the corner, and everybody's here ready to party here in California. What do you good old boys do down south, Big C?
Well, I like to put a little mayonnaise on my sandwiches from time to time also. So, put a little mayonnaise on the sandwich, moisten it up, and wash it down with a nice cold beer and a shot of moonshine.
Oh, moonshine. You guys should market moonshine and make it legal. I know JFK's granddaddy, he's the one who started the moonshine trafficking business for you good old boys. But no taxes. You guys got it figured out. We gotta catch up to you good old boys down south, Big C here in California.
We're just low income people down here. We got them high rollers on the West Coast living on the ocean,
Well, I know the NASCAR people. The NASCAR sponsors, these drivers make about $60 million, some of the good ones. But you think about an athlete that might have a 5-year, $60 million contract. These guys are making $60 million in 1 year for the good ones, Big C. How do you guys pull that off? And they get free moonshine.
well, that's the thing about driving fast and going left all the time, You got people fool. They think you're going to make a right turn and we're always going left.
I know they build those cars with only one turn signal for you good old boys down south. I think it back to the movie with Jackie Gleason and Burt Reynolds in back in the day. And it was Smoking the Bandit is what it was, Big C. Smoking the Bandit when he drove the Black Firebird. And I think they were trying to take moonshine from Texarkana, Arkansas, somewhere along Mississippi. So
they were actually taking Coors because Coors beer couldn't go past the Rocky Mountains, the Great Divide and stuff. So they had a truckload of Coors that they were running, bringing it down south so we could find out what everybody out west was drinking.
Well, that scares me, Big C, that you know so much about that. But as we digress, I want to say thank you to Bud Light because you're one of our sponsors, and we thank you because we know the good old boys. They might start making Bud Light moonshine, Big C. I think they really have a big market down there with you guys in the South.
Well, we call that a Boilermaker, where we take that shot and drop it in their glass and chug it down all at one time.
I understand that. And thinking of chugging it down at one time, I know how you like to pay homage to our great Hollywood actors, and none other than the great Chuck Norris. He's also a martial arts expert, but someone that's a great actor and has a lot of interest in the sports business as well. What are your thoughts on the great Chuck Norris, Big C?
Well, when you think about Chuck Norris, Charlton, he's more known for a TV series that he had was Walker, Texas Ranger. But, what ran for about a decade on CBS, but he really got his start in a martial arts movie, Enter the Dragon, with the former great Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Where he fought Bruce Lee in the Roman Coliseum, Charlton.
Yeah.
But he's also played in movies like The Expendables with Jason Stamos, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. This man has had a broad array of acting throughout his career.
Well, I know when you think about acting, and you talk about the great Bruce Lee and how martial arts, a lot of good athletes, they are actually involved in the martial arts, Big C, and it helps them with their stamina. I know the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was skilled in martial arts. And so as an athlete, a lot of times it's about discipline. It's not about fighting. But that's something that a lot of athletes have engaged in, Big C, over the years.
Well, when you talk about that, Kareem also were in one of those movies where he fought against Bruce Lee. But they were normal sparring partners, Charlton. And, he had such grace and balance as a huge hulking man, being 7'2".
Yeah.
And people looked at, how he played the game with such finesse.
Yeah.
He learned that body balance, working through martial arts as well as other things, Charlton, through meditation. But, when you think about the discipline of being in martial arts, and Chuck Norris has spent majority of his adult life involved in that art form, Charlton.
Yeah.
And, it transcended into the movies because a lot of the movies he was in, he had fighting scenes. And that's how he went through, through the fighting scenes. He also had Steven Seagal and, in some of his movies. And, he was another one of those martial arts experts and stuff. But, it is, when you look at the actors over the years that have come from the sports arena originally, and being able to transcend to the big screen and perpetuate their careers that way, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, that's a talent. That's a talent to be able to do multiple professions and be an expert in all of them, Charlton.
Well, I think about when you say being an expert in all of them, and I know that you're really big. We've seen a lot happen, Big C, lately with the NFL draft, and ironically, I heard a lot of talk about college football coming up because, you know, they start these spring practices right now. And even though the season starts in late August,
that's just, you know, the season never ends down here.
I mean the rest of the country.
Well, Charlton, you guys got a beach. We don't have a beach, okay? You know, you go in and take a shower, and that's the water that you're gonna get on you. Then you come on back out to practice, okay?
Well, I understand that, but see, when you talk about college football, which is one of my favorite sports, and you talk about the Power 5 conferences. You have the Pac-12, of course, the SEC. You have the Big 12, and then you have the Big 10, whatever that's called, and then the Big 12. Used to be the Big 8. Now there's so much talk about college recruiting and players on Twitter, Big C. And this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And you can only get it there brand new at your Northern California Cadillac dealers. And when you go by and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, down in the South, you cover the SEC from the East Coast. I know Texas A&M in the news lately because they have one of their receiver coaches. He's been having kind of a Twitter conversation, and they've had some athletes decide to uncommit to Texas A&M, which coaches do it all the time, Big C. You don't have a scholarship until you actually sign the dotted line. What do you think about coaches going on social media so much, talking about players that decided not to go there, Big C? Is that a good or bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing, Charlton, because it lays a bad precedence for your future. When you look at future upcoming recruits, are you going to look at them in the same light? Are they going to have that same amount of respect for you? When you think about you do things in confidentiality,
yeah.
And no college scholarship is guaranteed, Charlton. It's only as good as long as the school leaves it in place.
Yeah.
They can snatch your scholarship at any time, and that's what a lot of people don't know. Those scholarships, and the only way it's guaranteed is that you get injured. That is the only way that your scholarship is guaranteed, is that you get injured and you choose not to play any longer. But there's players all over the place, Charlton, that lose their scholarships. I was looking this morning, and since January, University of Kentucky basketball team, one of your favorites, Colorado.
Wait a minute, You say Kentucky gives scholarships that last more than 1 year, Big C?
They've lost 10 scholarship players from their basketball team, Charlton, since January.
Wait, that's funny.
When you think about that, 10 players that were under scholarship in January, that's a huge number. That's 2/3 of your team, Charlton.
Well, I think John Calipari doesn't read the fine print. He thought all those scholarships are for 1 year. That's why players come there 1 year and then they're gone. They didn't know they could stay the full 4.
No, I think they do on the 6-month range, Charlton. I don't think anybody's saying a year. It's been 6 months.
I think Calipari is going to go back and renegotiate his multi-million-dollar contract. He's thinking, hey, if I get to coach these guys for 4 years, I want to double my money. So that's breaking news for you SEC folks down in the South. But I think that's incredible because, Big C, you know, back in the day when you played ball, there was no social media. They didn't have people from different parts of the country tweeting about high school athletes. And we know we talked about
media. Our former social media back in those days was going to a phone booth, dropping the quarter in, and making a phone call.
That was true. In fact, I saw something about marketing and how you retire, how you plan for retirement. It was a commercial for the 1980s. And they were saying that in the future, that people wouldn't have to go drop a dime in the phone booth. They would actually have a cell phone that they could carry around the same way they carry their wallet. How time flies. Now kids in junior high school have cell phones, Big C. And now it's also a recruiting tool because even though you cannot, supposedly you cannot, go after high school kids and recruit them, everyone has their social media with their universities. So now a kid can go onto the university website and get updated on a daily basis, Big C. Is that a good or bad thing for the high school level? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what it's doing is backdooring the system, Charlton. It's allowing them to cheat legally where you're not face-to-face with somebody, but now you go on the social media, you go through Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and you get on somebody's page and you can send them all the information, or you can have someone else forward them the information. But all they're doing is legally cheating, you know, and getting away with it. I mean, whether you do it up front or behind closed doors, everyone's doing it. and just nobody's getting slapped on the wrist about it, Charlton.
Well, when you talk about being slapped on the wrist, I know that you like to talk about the college football playoffs and how there's so much talk about it because we just got through the NFL, and I want your thoughts on this. We just got through the NFL draft, and they're talking about all of these great players that are being drafted out of college. And you know, Big C, not all of them are going to make a team because in order to make an NFL team, you have to put somebody out of a job, okay? So when you talk about that, there's so much money, Big C, in the game of college football. You know, down in the SEC, almost everybody has at least 100,000 seat stadiums. Here,
it's real fans.
Well, real fans, but that money's going someplace, and it's not going to the product on the field. And I know that Jay Billis, as an attorney, says that athletes should get paid. The NCAA doesn't want to do that. They think that paying them is giving them a scholarship. But they don't think that way when the money comes into the coffers because we've talked about Texas A&M. I think they have 110,000 seats or 115,000 seats, Big C?
122,000 seats down in Kyle Field down at A&M. But,
wow.
You know, when you talk about players being paid, I mean, Larry Tunsil, we saw him, you know, his draft stock plummeted on draft night when he went number 13 to the Dolphins, which cost him about $8 million.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was several tweets that was pulled up between him and the assistant athletic directors about bills being paid for his parents, monies being needed. And so, you know, as we talk about with this social media platform, you know, the minute more than one person knows something, you no longer have a shit.
Yeah.
And these players are not.
Well, Big
they
C.
want everybody to know it's smoking the bar and somebody hacked his account.
Yeah.
It's not out there for somebody to hack. The only person hacking it is you.
Yeah.
You're not that important of an individual when you're in college for somebody to go and hack your account. So, you know, that lie didn't have any credence that he told.
Well, see, I just thought about that because I know we spent a lot of time talking about the NFL draft and how obviously we know it goes on. It's just not, it's never going to be publicized what happens, how coaches cheat or sometimes schools can cheat. And when you have coaches...
I wouldn't say that they cheat.
Okay,
they're dishonest. Okay?
Yeah, right. They're dishonest or they have amnesia. We understand that. And so, again, we talked about these power conferences. And you brought it up earlier in the year when we were at Salem Media, how we had the BCS playoffs. It was just 2 teams. It was chosen by the BCS committee. Then it went to 4 teams. Well, now there's always this talk about how do we get to an 8-team playoff because there's always going to be conferences that are complaining about not being able to get in, Big C. And why I bring that up is because we just saw this draft. Now, they covered heavily on ESPN and the NFL Network the first 2 rounds of the draft. But what they don't talk about is how these guys go from free labor into being multimillionaires for most of them. And I think it's so egregious because when you think about it, they only have about the good first 3 to 4 rounds of the draft covered. Outside of that, nothing's covered, Big C. So they're not talking about any of those guys getting paid, any of those guys being able to make it into the professional leagues. I think that's egregious because there's 120 schools, Division I or more, and there's no compensation for these guys, but they make a really big deal out of the very few that get drafted, Big C. And I just think that's taking advantage of a lot of young kids because they don't get the educations either, Big C, for the most part.
Well, Charlton, when you think about the 122 schools that are playing Division I football, and there was 256 players drafted. So there was a very minimal number of players that were eligible for the draft that were picked up by the NFL. So what's going to happen to all these players? And when you think about teams, they're out there signing between 22 and 25 free agents.
Yeah.
Those free agents are more for practice time than they are about making the team. You may see 1, 2 of them make particular rosters, but, you know, when you draft 7 players in the draft, you really have invested that these players should be a part of your organization. You bring the other 22 to 25 in as practice dummies, as we always call that.
Yeah.
But, you know, these players, the chances of them making a roster is very minimal.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look at the total numbers of players, you know, you got 256 drafted.
Yeah.
You bring in another 500-600.
Yeah.
You know, through free agency. And so even in the players who make the team, as you talked about, Charlton, players have to be fired. And you saw that the day after the draft. Yeah. When players started being released, contracts weren't being renewed or extended. The option years were not being picked up because of the amount of money that you would have to pay that player. So they let them go out on the free agency market where they can, if they bring them back to that organization, they can bring them back at a greatly reduced cost, Charlton.
Well, see, and I'm glad you talk about that because this ties into the high school kid that said he's going to change his mind and not go to Texas A&M. And it's not just Texas A&M. All the major schools are doing it. I even see USC with the great Lynn Swann, and he's, shaking hands with all these athletes. Of course, he doesn't want them to get paid, but they get to at least shake his hand. They won't give him money, but a handshake will do.
And you want to bring USC into the fold. There was a quarterback back in their 80s, Josh David Booty, out of Louisiana.
Yeah.
Who was highly recruited by USC. He was the number one college quarterback in the country.
Yeah, he went to Evangel Christian out of Louisiana.
He had committed to USC, signed a letter of intent, showed up for class, decided he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Dropped out of school, left, went back to Louisiana, and played at LSU. So players have done this for a long time. They have decommitted. It's nothing new because of social media. It's been done for years where players have decommitted to universities that they've been in. The great Terry Bradshaw started off at LSU, Charlton.
Yeah.
As a quarterback. Ended up at Louisiana Tech, such as Jeff Driscoll, who was just drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, who started out at Florida. Players do this all the time. Eric Golston, who went undrafted out of Florida State, started at Notre Dame. So players all the time decommit and go to other universities where they feel that their opportunity is better. So social media didn't start this action. All it's doing is talking about it.
Yeah.
It's always been there, but network coverage of sports has gotten so big is that any little story is a big story nowadays, Charlton. It really resonates more than what it should. Let the game be the game, let the players be the players. But when you guys have nothing to talk about that will enhance a sporting event, let's go talk about Twitter. Let's go talk about Facebook.
Yeah.
That's not the game, Charlton. The game is played with sweat and stress.
Yeah, and I agree. You brought up a point, too, because you talked about Josh David Booty. He played at Evangel Christian High School down in Shreveport, Louisiana, which I believe is where Louisiana Tech is, where Terry Bradshaw played college. His senior year, because he graduated early from that private high school, they had a game with California powerhouse De La Salle out here in the Bay Area. And that's a game that De La Salle won. I think it was 27-10. And these two teams were national powers and, of course, state powers. De La Salle from California, Evangel Christian from Louisiana. But Josh David Booty did not play in that game because he elected to go to college earlier because he had already graduated. I think that's incredible because he did the same thing out of USC going back to, I think, LSU you were saying. But the point is, we talk about the college levels. These high school players are playing national schedules. There's schools out of Las Vegas called Bishop Gorman out of Las Vegas. I think Randall Cunningham's son went there. Even Snoop Dogg's son went there. Now, Snoop Dogg lives in California, from what I understand, Big C. But,
that's everywhere.
Right. But when you have a private plane, I guess you can get your son to school on time. But, again, private schools can do that. How does that translate into what we see in college football? And I want to bring it up, Big C, because it's so important, I think. And this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealer, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the 1 Series all the way up to the flagship 7 Series, 600 horsepower of raw power, also known as the M7 and the 760 Li. So, Big C, as we talk about this college football, they're trying to get USC to play Alabama. We know we're going to go out there and beat you good old boys in the South for the Kickoff Classic. That's a sure thing. I think Lynn Swann's running wind sprints as we speak. Big C.
Charlton, you guys like your head up until kickoff, okay? We're going to fight you if you said that.
Okay. When I heard Lynn Swann's running wind sprints, I said he's doing more than just being the athletic director. But at the same time, how would you see, because you guys dominate college football down in the South, do you think we need to go to another rung of, say, 8 teams in the college playoff system? That would guarantee the SEC at least 2 schools in the playoffs, Big C. Is that something you're in favor of or you're not in favor of?
Well, Charlton, you're going to have to expand it to 8 teams because right now you automatically leave out one of the Power 5 conferences, okay? Every year you're going to do that, and you're always going to get those heritage conferences into. You're going to get the Big Ten, you're going to get the SEC into the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 has not made it into the playoffs yet, Charlton. So you have to expand. You got to have 3 games played to get to the national championship. You just can't play one and done. and be over with. That second round wins the championship.
Yeah.
If you think about the Division I AA playoffs, when it started, Charlton, it only had 4 teams.
And when did they start that, Big C? They started that in the 80s they started that, or 1970s?
I believe it was 1978 when the Division I AA playoffs started.
Okay.
And then in 1980 they implemented overtime, and that's where college football overtime came from, was 1AA football also, Charlton. So 1AA has laid a blueprint for the NCAA, how they should function. So they're just following that blueprint. It took about 3 to 4 years for it to expand to 8 teams, Charlton.
Yeah.
It eventually got up to 16 teams. Is what they play now in the 1AA. So I see the 8 teams coming within the next 2 seasons, Charlton. I don't know if it will expand beyond that because of school and everything else.
Yeah.
But with the amount of money involved, you never know where the NCAA may go, Charlton, when you look at this playoff run.
Well, let me ask you this question, Big C, because you're big on making sure that athletes are taken care of, and I appreciate that. Bowling Green.
I never said I was saying it. Go on.
No, I understand. Hey, we keep certain things under the table. I understand. Bowling Green University, they're going to pay an ex-offensive lineman $712,000, and this is why. At University of Ohio, they're going to pay $712,000 to a former football player who said that the team's coaches and medical staff did not pull him from practice right away after he suffered multiple concussions, and that led to a permanent brain injury. I think the former offensive lineman's name is Cody Silk, and he accused the Bowling Green staff in a lawsuit of failing to address his concussions, Big C. We know how the NFL is really big on that. Is that a bad thing for college football? Because once you open that door, there are going to be a lot more players blaming college football for their head trauma or other issues, Big C. Good or bad, what do you think for college football?
Well, Charlton, this is just not a college football issue. This is a life issue. And I think the precedent is that you have had people that have not been adequately medically trained to handle issues like that. We go back a couple of years ago, and if you remember Mike Leach, when he was at Texas Tech and he had the lawsuit, he lost his job behind a concussion of Craig James' son. Yeah. Craig James, a former running back from SMU, broadcast on ESPN and played with the New England Patriots. Yeah. And shared the college backfield with Eric Dickerson. But his son had an alleged concussion, and Mike Leach had him go lay in a tool shed during practice. Yeah. Now, the heat that tool shed is going to reach, during the middle of the day out in Texas. So this concussion thing is nothing new. It's just everybody said, hey, just come on back out there. I remember during the days when I played, when I don't even think they had asphalt back in those days. Right. They had grass, though, right, Big C? They had real grass. But, if you had a concussion, what they would do was pop an ammonia capsule, Charlton, and run it under your nose and, ask you how many fingers you had up. That was it, Charlton. There was no concussion protocol, so there was many concussions that went unnoticed, Charlton, because nobody was medically trained to recognize the symptoms of what was wrong with the player. And players weren't intelligent enough to say, hey, I have a problem. All they wanted to know is how soon can I get back out on the field? Because if I'm not out there and my backup goes in, all of a sudden I may not get back into the game. And I saw that happen on many occasions when I was a player, that somebody got hurt, the backup went into the game, Charlton, and that starter never got his job back. Yeah, and I understand that too, because there's always a pressure to play. And that's why I appreciate you for how you come at the NFL draft, because everyone's making a whole day or a couple of days of it. But really what it means is you got drafted, yes, but you have to put another professional player out of a job, and it's not always that simple, Big C. So now that we know the NFL settled a lawsuit for CTE, now you have college players. If they get into the same type of argument in the court system, there are a lot more college players than there are professional players. I think that could open up Pandora's box. And speaking of Pandora's box, this segment is also sponsored by Beneath His Wings Foundation. To support or donate, go to bhwf.org or contact Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. Again, Beneath His Wings Foundation's bhwf.org or contact Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment. Now, Big C, when we look at something that's happening in the world of sports, and you just brought that up too, because we understand money's a big thing. It's always a factor. So more playoffs, now players are suing, and these are past players about concussion. I think the NCAA, as they're trying to get the money grab,
Some of these players are smarter to realize all they have to do is file a claim. You they have to settle out of court, or you go through a jury trial. No one wants to go through a jury trial, Big C.
Well, Charlton, when you look at the number of players in college football compared to the NFL, the numbers are just huge.
Yeah.
And, you got players all the time being injured on the college level, but they're not superstars, Charlton. They're not seen on television in some of the smaller universities. So you really don't know the numbers of injuries. I remember years ago, the great Nick Bonacani, former middle linebacker of the Miami Dolphins, the Killer Bees defense. He had a son that was paralyzed playing football back at Columbia University.
Yeah.
And, he spent his life, and Nick has done marvelous charitable work over the years to raise interest and awareness and funds for spinal injuries of athletes. But there's so many college athletes, Charlton, that suffer these spinal injuries. And, we put a lot of talk now on CTE, on concussions, okay?
Yeah.
But it's the spinal injuries that many athletes have suffered over the years that really get no recognition, Charlton. And those things are catastrophic and life-altering forever.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand the brain is a very valuable organ, and you want to have your thought process. But when you can't use your limbs because you suffered a spinal injury, Charlton, that's catastrophic, not just for that individual, but his entire family around him that has to spend the rest of his life supporting him, Charlton.
Yeah, and I know sometimes you brought it to my attention. You look at guys like Terry Bradshaw, he walks with a cane. Guys like Mike Ditka, he can barely stand up. We've heard about the great Earl Campbell. Now, all of this ties into...
Let's go even further, Charlton.
Yeah.
Mike Utley played guard for the Detroit Lions. And Mike Utley was crippled in a game back in the early 80s. He was the number one draft pick out of Washington State, war number 60.
Yeah.
But he was injured on a basic play where he broke his neck in a game. And he has spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair from a basic play in NFL, just a run play. He took a head-on shot, went down, and it was from a linebacker, not another lineman, from a linebacker.
Yeah.
And he's been paralyzed for life, CT4.
Wow, that's incredible, man, because a lot of times people don't understand how, and again, we celebrate the draft, and you notice, Big C, during the celebration of the draft, there was hardly any talk of CTE. There was hardly any talk of settlements. It was just about how these great players from college, even the ones they tell us that are great, even though they go 14 and 26 in their career, they're telling us how they're going to become millionaires. And I'm happy for all of them, but I think there's a real side of life that when I look at the great Earl Campbell, who can barely walk, but he was a battering ram for the Houston Oilers. And I just think there's a lot more health issue that we got to take care of, especially when we talk about expanding the playoffs at Division I level we went from 2 games, now 4 games. Now they're talking 8 games. And as we get into this final segment, Big C, it's sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And also in baseball, Major League Baseball, we have the American League. The Yankees 7-0 over the Orioles. It was the Blue Jays 4-3 over the Rangers. Indiana 4 the Tigers. The Indians 4 the Tigers nothing. The Astros 16 and the Twins 4. It was the Red Sox over the White Sox, and that's 5-2. And also we had the Mariners over the A's 9-8. In the National League, Big C, the Cubs, they're playing great this year, 6-2 over the Pirates. The Mets 8, the Braves nothing, and the Reds 7-4 over the Giants, and the Rockies beat the Padres 2-0. I want to ask you a question, Big C, because basketball, and you've talked so much about Steph Curry and how great he is at shooting, even though he hasn't played in the playoffs. Last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers over the Atlanta Hawks, they shot elite record 25 three-point shots. And I know guys like Charles Barkley, they don't like the three-point basket, but it seems like the teams that have a chance to win the Eastern and Western Conference, they excel at three-point shooting, Big C. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, talking about 2 months ago, all the talk in the NBA was how bad Steph Curry was for the game, how bad the Warriors were for the game of basketball traditional play, because they shot so many threes, but, they made a copious amount of them, Charlton.
Yeah.
Last night, the NBA world was singing the Cleveland Cavaliers' praise for setting an NBA record of 25 in a game.
Yeah.
The most ever, regular or postseason. And that's all you heard about on the talk show with the talking heads. But, just 2 months ago, everybody was blasting the Warriors and Steph Curry for being so proficient in shooting the threes, Charlton, for changing the game, making everybody else. But, last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers became kings because they could shoot the three.
Yeah.
So, it's a double standard of a team who has set a precedent. All of a sudden, a team that's been struggling and trying to find a way to play at Golden State's level, all of a sudden now they're the greatest team in basketball because they knocked down 25 threes in one game. But can they do it consistently, like the Golden State Warriors? J.R. Smith has been a hired gun his entire career since being drafted by the Denver Nuggets out of high school a decade ago.
Yeah.
That's what he was drafted for, was to shoot threes, and he shot threes everywhere he's been. He's a streak shooter. Last night, I believe he was 7 or 8 for 12.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Shooting threes.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's that type of player. It just so happens the rest of the team was hitting threes, Charlton. And LeBron is not known as a great outside shooter. He knocked down 4 or 5 of them. So it was just one of those rhythmic nights for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was great for the NBA to see that type of output from a team. But they made more threes at one point than the Hawks had made baskets in totality.
Yeah, Smith.
So the game was never close.
Yeah, Smith finished with 23 points. James and Kyrie Irving had 19 points, and they each had 4 3-pointers at the same time. Let me ask you one more thing about the West Coast, because the Los Angeles Lakers, we know they have to rebuild. They let go of Byron Scott, but he was given, as we talked about last week, he was given kind of a vote of approval through Mitch Kupchak. And then he was let go for Luke Walton, who was only given the job because he coached Golden State when Kerr was injured. But I could have coached Golden State, Big C. Just give the ball to Steph Curry, Festus Ezeli, Draymond Green, and then making Luke Walton seem like he's a better coach than Scott. And Skyron, I think Scott took, I think he was on the East Coast, Brooklyn, I believe he took them to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple times, Big C. I think so.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Charles. Luke Walton with the Los Angeles Lakers in the first half of the season next year is going to have a better chance of being 9-42 than he is 42-9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That record that he had with Golden State was not because he's a good coach.
Yeah.
He inherited something that all he had to do was sit there on the sideline and watch it play. He was a fan.
Yeah.
He was a fan for 50 games. That's all he had to do was sit there and be a fan and be quiet. Everything would handle itself. Now, he goes to the Los Angeles Lakers. Can he coach? That's what's going to be on his resume now. Can he coach?
Yeah.
And we've seen so many great coaches in the past go to these organizations that don't win, whether it's baseball, football, basketball. You walk in there because you were an assistant with a program that was a winner, and you can't bring those players with you. You're not going to see Klay Thompson. You're not going to see Steph Curry. You're not going to see Draymond Green. They're not going to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is got a scrap heap that you're going to work with. Okay?
Well, think about
Band-Aids
this.
and bubblegum. That's all you got in L.A. is Band-Aids and bubblegum.
Think about this. Mark Jackson was the coach for Golden State before he didn't get along with Lacob and the ownership at Golden State. So he's announcing basketball. There's nothing wrong with that. But Mark Jackson, you would think he built the Golden State Warriors into what they were before Steve Kerr came along. And Steve Kerr even admits that he walked into a great situation, Big C. I would think that Mark Jackson would have gotten a call first by the LA Lakers because he built the Golden State Warriors into nothing to a 50-win team, Big C, for the first time in over 20 years. But when the call came, they hired a guy that never had any coaching experience.
Well, Charlton, you look at Mark Jackson, you look at Scotty Brooks, formerly of Oklahoma
Kevin
City.
McHale?
Kevin McHale's out there. There's plenty of coaches, Charlton, that have been around in the NBA. You know, Frank Vogel just lost his job in Indianapolis. Well, he didn't lose his job. Larry Bird didn't renew his contract.
Right.
So Larry said he wasn't fired, okay?
Right.
Technicality. I don't want you here.
Right.
Okay? But, you know, Walton gets this job. You know, he played 8 years with the Lakers, won a couple championships. But it still doesn't mean that he can take and transcend and build the team from scratch, which is what you're going to have to do in L.A.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to put your blueprint on. Now, the veteran coaches that they've had there over the past several years have not been able to get the job done. Even Phil Jackson walked away from that scenario, Charlton.
Yeah.
About 6 years ago. He said, I can't coach these guys.
Yeah.
You know, it's beyond me. Now, if Phil Jackson couldn't coach that, and he's one of the godfathers of the coaching industry, Charlton.
Yeah.
How are you going to bring in a young guy who doesn't have that experience to say, hey, I can turn this around? Now, he still had the mama when he was down there.
Yeah.
So at least he had a superstar. Who do you go to take a shot in L.A. now?
Well,
Who's the guy that's going to launch the threes for you?
Yeah, ironically, Scott was saying his firing was unexpected because he was giving Virginia Buss an approval. And also he was told by Kupchak, you're going to be the guy we want to go with. But after they wanted to just give Kobe a good send-off party, and even though they sacrificed the Lakers organization for Kobe, Now they said we want to go in a different direction. But Scott's the same guy that did everything they asked him to do, and he was a great Laker, has championships with him. I just think that's a bad way to start out a new rebuilding thing when you don't even show your loyalty to one of your favorite players, one of the guys who's actually coached the team to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think that's a good thing. I know everyone wants somebody new, even if you don't have experience. It just doesn't make sense, Big C. In the last 30 seconds, your thoughts on that, Big C?
Well, when you look at it, Charlton, it's that coaching carousel, the good old boy syndrome that we've seen so often. Byron Scott's a minority coach. He's been around. He has coached winners. He has gotten teams to the playoffs, but he's had tools to work with.
Yeah.
When you have no tools to work with and your so-called superstar is a guy who is limping up and down the court every night and can't even raise up and take a jump shot, you're going to struggle as a team.
Yeah.
But you can't make any personnel moves as a coach. And that's where he was shackled at.
Yeah.
Is that he could only play the hand that was dealt with him. Cut check did not bring anybody in to help out Byron Scott's situation, but Byron Scott was to blame for the team's ineptitude, Charlton.
Well, speaking of Byron Scott, I mean, he's kind of caught by surprise, but I also want to say this final segment was sponsored by United Labor. Guaranteed life insurance up to $100,000, guaranteed issue. Also, Goosehead Insurance for property and casualty. Get the lowest cost insurance. Just tweet out Charlton and Big C Sports, and we'll get you some information on that. Big C, as you know, this show happens too fast, and we are out of time again. But I always appreciate your input, especially you good old boys calling in from the South and the East Coast. I know you got to put down your moonshine to help us out on Charlton and Big C, but I really appreciate you, Big C. I will have a sip sometime. You can also have a sip sometime every Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Charlton and Big C Sports. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope you have a super fantastic day.